I got it into my head that I wanted to make a video every day for the first 7 days since when I started this account. I'm definitely not going to be making a video every day, but it's very easy for me to do that, partly because I don't really have anyone that I talk to, as I've said. I can talk to my sister. There's a few people online that I know that I can call up, but a lot of the times I can't really talk to them about various things that are on my mind. But I went to Savers, which is because I didn't know about it, but I'm kind of assuming whoever's listening might know about it. It's basically like a secondhand store. There's another word for that, like a thrift shop, whatever. Except that it's different because it's like an actual company, It's like a for-profit place, which is in contrast to other types of places. And I think people sort of complain about that, but I went to I only know about this. I think I must have heard of it before, but like my boss told me about it because I was telling him basically I can't really afford anything, which is a little bit of an exaggeration, but basically I don't buy clothes. I don't like going shopping. It depresses me, specifically for clothes. And it's not even about that it costs too much or anything like that. A couple of reasons, so I don't like doing it. But so he told me about this place, and I watched somebody on TikTok who very jubilantly, describes the various things that she finds at it's not Salvation Army, it's another one. I just looked it up because I knew it was going to bother me if I couldn't think of it's like the most famous one, I think, but like Goodwill, right? So, but the thing is, I don't really like going to these places for a couple of reasons, but the one that I went that nearest to me is the Salvation Army, and when I've gone there, the couple times that I have, it's really depressing to me. And I don't know how other people respond. It's sort of similar to going into Walmart for me. I remember one time I was talking to my sister about this, and she said, well, my son loves going into Walmart, and he doesn't get depressed by it at all. But I know that there are other people who feel this way, and there's a website called People of Walmart, which I don't look at because whatever that mentality is where you make fun of somebody because they look, vaguely retarded, or they're ugly, or they're really fat, or they're just sort of badly dressed and they look a little bit freakish or whatever. And, you find entertainment in that. It just doesn't work for me. It just feels like it's bringing my vibration down when it's the same when I look at that sort of content. It's the same thing as watching The Office. Now, people over the years have told me well, you have to check it out or whatever, or that type of thing. You can't just watch one episode. And all I know is as far as The Office, and I also don't care about the UK Office. I don't really like that guy who started that show, Ricky Gervais. He just seems kind of thinks very highly of himself, and he's kind of caustic type of humor. But I don't dislike him. It's just I'm not into him at all. But so I don't like The Office because it's cringe humor where somebody's doing something weird or they're embarrassing themselves, and you're supposed to think that it's funny. And I'm sounding right now like I'm moralizing, I'm not even really judging people who watch it. I'm just saying I can't watch that. It's the secondhand embarrassment or cringe factor. It's I just don't want to consume that content. But anyway, so I watched this girl on TikTok. Yeah, like I said, she goes to Goodwill and she comes home and she's like, look what I found on Goodwill. And she just seems sort of innocent, And I later found, I've been following this person for a long time. And then she later said that she had autism. And I was like, okay, yeah, like everyone else, right? But then she kind of explained it, and I noticed over time her mannerisms and stuff, and I was like, I guess she is like a little off. Like there's something off, you know? And she wears headphones and all that kind of stuff, like she gets overstimulated or whatever and stuff like that. But the point is, like, I started thinking about Goodwill and like trying to go to like thrift stores and stuff like that, partly because of her and partly because on my boss's suggestion about it, and he says that he goes there and he really likes it and stuff like that. So I decided to go to not only one of them today, but like two of them, and they're relatively near each other, and I was getting kind of nervous on the way driving there, but I decided to do it anyway. And what I sort of feared would happen is what happened, and that's partly why it's been something like 9 or 10 months since I last went there, and it was super crowded, and that was confusing to me. But again, like I said, I don't really know the rhythms of how people come out here. Like, you could say, like, well, that's because of Memorial Day, and it's like, I guess, but when I think of Memorial Day weekend, I don't really think of people going into department stores or just shopping in general. I would think of that as more like you're going to the beach or something, or you're hanging out with your family. But yeah, it was really crowded, and I was looking for something very specific, or a type of thing that was very specific, which is related to what this girl on TikTok, she sees, and she buys and stuff. I don't know how much money she has, but she doesn't have a lot of money, or else she wouldn't be going to Goodwill all the time. But she has enough money that she just buys random shit all the time, which is something that I don't do. But I wanted to go there to see if they had any video game related stuff, and like specifically like retro, like, because that's what she tends to find, and that's what I've seen people find on the internet, like on Reddit or whatever, and people will be like, I found this old Wii on at Goodwill or whatever. And I guess sort of, when you talk about Long Island, you have like, we kind of get less of all those normal types of stores that other people seem to have a lot of. Like, if you want to go to a Guitar Center, you have to sort of almost go into the city, But so anyway, I went in there, and it was really crowded, and I went to first of all, I couldn't find what I was looking for from the signs. I had to look all around the place, and meanwhile I'm wearing, ripped up jeans that they're so ripped at this point that I'm actually kind of embarrassed to even wear them outside. It's more like something that I should probably not wear outside and just like walk around my apartment in. And I tried to fix them, but I couldn't. And so it's sort of like people probably looking at me thinking that, well, I'm obviously going there to buy jeans. But I was trying to see if they had any like old video game stuff. And I went to the electronic sort of section, which was very small. And first of all, they have an abundance of keyboards for whatever reason. Yeah, they have a shitload of keyboards. They did have one Apple keyboard, which I almost thought of buying, but I was like, I don't really want a keyboard. Like, I don't really need a keyboard. I have one. And in fact, though, a long time ago when I was trying to buy a keyboard because I broke one because I smashed my fist on it. And that's not really characteristic of me, but I did break it. I broke the space bar, and then it was like, the plastic was cheap, so it snapped or it broke. So then at that point I was looking for an old Mac keyboard, because those are my favorite keyboards, to the extent that you can have a preference like that. And I'm talking about like from the 90s. But the problem is then it has that weird proprietary, connection that I don't even remember what it's called, but, everything today is USB. And so it didn't even make sense anyway. But the Apple keyboard that they had was like the small one that I think it comes with like the iMac, and it's just not it's not very fun to type on. It's not really a good keyboard, except that it's like a little nicer than, the typical keyboard that you would get from Dell or whatever. So then they had like TVs, and they were all kind of cheap. And the coolest thing that they had that I wasn't really interested in buying at all was like older, like audio video equipment, and really audio, like CD players and like little receivers and cassette decks and stuff like that. And I almost considered buying a cassette deck, but it was Olympus, and that's like the cheap brand that Radio Shack used to sell. And it's like, it's not even like a judgment thing. It's just like, if I'm going to buy something that I really don't need, I don't even know if I have any tapes. Besides the one that I used to record when I used to have a 4-track. And you can't play those on a normal cassette player because it'll all be like, it's playing 4 tracks, so it's going to play stuff on top of each other, and it's going to play backwards and forwards. So, it didn't really make sense even for me to buy it anyway. But they had zero video game stuff. And then I looked at the video games, like, where they have like DVDs and stuff like that. And for some reason, pretty much every video game, the video games that I was looking at was like PS2. I don't have a video game console now because I sold my PS5. And so I was thinking like, if I do buy another console and I get it like used, it's going to be a PS2, because that was the console that I used probably the most for a sort of short window of time between about 2004 and 2006 or 7 or something like that. And then I kind of really stopped playing video games very much at all for a really long time. I mean, really up until now. Like, I still do, but it's basically like I'm playing an emulator. Part of the reason I sold the PS5 was because I really wasn't using it, and I didn't want to sell it. And the person I sold it to, who's a friend, he still hasn't even gotten back to me about it. Like, I don't know if I had to text him, and I said, did you get it? Because he kind of told me that you live in a neighborhood where you don't want to leave things out, and in other words, like, because people have commented to me, because when I use my bike, I don't lock it up, and a couple people have commented to me like, he couldn't do that where I live, so it's a funny thing about where I live, which is like, I really don't like it here. I've said that before. I've said it many times. It's not something I'm going to harp on, but it is safe, basically. Like, you don't really worry about getting something stolen. Another thing I do is, like, I leave the car running when I go into certain places, not every place, but like if I'm just going in and out, like especially if it's like 7-Eleven or something, I will leave the car running, because I don't think it's dangerous to do that. Although people have told me, like, why are you leaving your car running? That happened just the other day. That somebody I knew, she parked right next to me, and she said, "You're leaving your car running?" And I was like, well, I like to live dangerously, or something stupid like that. But like, because I don't want to get into an explanation. But I don't, starting your car is like a taxing thing to the car, especially if it's an older car. And I just try to take care of it. So like, I don't want to start the car more than I have to. The other weird example is like when I go into the post office, I leave my car running, and then I have to take like the post office key like off of my keychain, and it's kind of annoying to do, but it's because I don't want to turn off the car and then restart it unnecessarily. It's not like I have a pathology about it, but I just don't want to do it if I don't have to. But anyway, so all of the video games that they had, like, because like I said, I was looking at the PS2 ones because I was sort of anticipating possibly buying a PS2, and that's really partly why I was there. Because I didn't think that, they're definitely going to have a used PS2. I didn't think that, but I was curious to see what they had, and they had nothing. But they do have some games like interspersed with, the DVDs and shit. So I'm looking at the PS2 games that they have, which in a way it's kind of surprising that they have any, because you're talking about a console that's 25 years old now. But they had a few, but for some reason, which I don't really understand, but all of them were sports games, like Madden or, Ken Griffey Jr. or whatever the fuck. I don't think he had anything past the Super Nintendo, but it would be all like baseball and football and like, basketball. It's just all sports games, which I have zero interest in. And I guess if you're a sports fan anyway, why would you want to play the roster from, like 2010? Although, to be honest, I feel like why would you care if you're playing it like against somebody? Like you have a buddy and you're like playing a sports game, like would it really matter? But anyway, all of them were sports games, so I just said, yeah, I'm done. And so I left, and then I went to the other one, which is about, for whatever reason, they're sort of like clustered. And so I went to the other one that was like roughly 5 or 10 miles away from there. And then and that one was bigger, which was good. So I kind of thought, well, maybe the other one was like where they, all the leftovers are, and like you can get the better stuff at this one. But then I went into the electronics section, and it was all the same shit. And I thought maybe that I was like missing something, and I was walking around like trying to find some sort of video game related stuff, like I thought maybe that was the electronics section, like with the cheap LCD TVs and stuff like that. But like maybe the video game, like if they have video game consoles, it's like it's somewhere else in the store. But and there was a black guy standing there looking, sort of talking to himself, like getting agitated, looking at the TVs and like picking them up because they're light enough to just sort of look at. And then I said to him, "Do you know anything about this place?" And part of the reason I spoke to him is because everyone else in there, like half of the people that work there are Hispanic, and they look like the Hispanic variety that does not speak English. So I'm just like, what? And this is just, an increasing thing in this country, but like, why am I going to ask somebody something and they're really not going to know what the fuck I'm asking, even if it's a really basic question? So that's why I asked him. And he said, "No, I don't. This is the second time I've been here." And so in other words, he really didn't want to talk to me. So that's fine. But I looked in their section, and again, they had a shitload of keyboards. I don't really know why. I guess if you have a spare keyboard and you want to make like $3 or however much, they buy it for, and then they sell it, like at $10, or even $5, or you're just literally donating it or whatever you're doing. But so yeah, that was almost worse in a way. And there was zero video game stuff, like, in other words, you'd think like, oh, you're going to find like an old Nintendo DS or something. And it's like, no, there was nothing. It had like I said, from the other one, it was just like TVs and, like some hi-fi audio equipment, but not hi-fi, but in the way that they colloquially used to use that term, like, it's like a stereo, and they had some CD players and DVD players and stuff like that I just, frankly, I just don't really need. I really, strangely enough, just barely use my TV. I'm like always, to the extent that I'm consuming media or like watching a movie or something, it's basically always in front of my computer. And then it was like the same thing again, where I was looking at the video games and it was all like Madden, whatever, randomly sports video games. To me, it's random. I'm sure there's a reason, but, and I have no interest in that. And then I was sort of trying to look at the books. Now, the books are almost worse. Yeah. I live next to a train. What else is new? And that seems to excite my cat. So anyway, but the books are almost worse because you look at the books and they're in no order. And I remember telling my boss this because he was kind of suggesting it to me partly for that. I'm not like a voracious reader, but I do read a lot more than the average person, because the average person doesn't really even read a book in a year, which I think is sort of lamentable. I think I think people are kind of missing out, you know. The reason I read is not even because I'm intellectual or something like that, but it's because if you have to pay attention to a book, and whereas watching a movie or a show is a more passive activity, if you suffer from depression like I do, and you are preoccupied with somehow escaping this reality, which is, you know, a non-starter, in a way it's better to read a book, because you really have to pay attention to what you're reading, and you have to use your imagination, and in a way it's a better escape than doing something like watching a movie, even if you have a really big TV. But so anyway, I told him, like, you know, I went to Savers, and like the books were just like all over the place. Like, you would think, you know, maybe some kind of order, like put it in roughly alphabetical order, and then he was kind of defending it, and he was like, well, they don't have enough staff and whatever. And he wasn't saying it was a good thing, but he was defending it, saying like, well, that's just the way that business runs, you know, they don't have time to put their books in alphabetical order. And meanwhile, I'm thinking, no, I don't think so. They can hire somebody to just fucking put the books in alphabetical order. I would do that. Like once a week if they hired me. Of course they wouldn't, because that's not the way corporations run, but like if they hired me, I would just take all of the books and then say, just put them in alphabetical order. It's not really that hard. But so the point is, like, I'm looking at the books, and I don't really know what I'm looking at. They have them, you know, in some kind of order, where it'll say like basic stuff like history and nonfiction. You know what? I don't even remember if they have history, but they'll have like biographies, then they'll have fiction, and then they'll have like crime or something like that. Do people want to read about crime so much that it has to have its own section? I mean, I know in like Barnes and Noble, that makes sense, but like when you're talking about Savers, it's like they don't have that many books, and they're putting it in very broad sections where they literally have a non-fiction section, but yet they also have a crime section, so whatever. But I was looking for science fiction because like I said, I want to escape this reality, and I didn't see anything that was science fiction, and it doesn't matter anyway. Well, actually I did. I saw a Michael Crichton book, but it was lumped in with the literature or the fiction, whatever they call it, and it became sort of meaningless because I can't look through every book that they have, and I was getting kind of antsy, and so I just thought, well, never mind. And so I ended up leaving with, ironically, even though I said I don't really need a new keyboard, I kind of felt weird, like, well, now I have to buy something, right? So I bought a keyboard that now I have to clean it, you know, because I'm not going to... It's not that I'm so germ phobic that I can't use it, but if I'm buying a random keyboard that someone might have like put his finger up his ass and then used it, you know, I don't want to think about that. So I'm going to have to clean the keyboard before I use it, so I haven't even plugged it in yet. But yeah, so I just feel like Long Island sort of misses out on certain things like that. Like I gave the example of Guitar Center. It's not everywhere, but like you really have to go very close to the point where you're almost like to Queens to find certain, what I would consider sort of like big box stores that you would think are sort of like everywhere, but they're really not. So, but yeah, my point in saying that is like this girl that I watch, who I have no idea where she lives, but she goes to Goodwill all the time, and she's always finding like kind of cool, you know, kitsch electronic stuff that I just didn't see any sign of. So yeah, I'm not gonna go into Queens or whatever to find a Goodwill, and I don't even know if there is one on Long Island at all. I don't remember. But we have Savers, which apparently is worse, because wherever this girl is going, she's able to find like where you find like literally like, old electronics and stuff, or I should say video game consoles and stuff. So they had zero of that. The only thing that they had video game related is, like I said, the sort of like PS2, and then like, it'll be Xbox 360 or something. So yeah, I really don't want to go to Savers again, unless for some reason somebody else wants me to go with him or her, and like I would just sort of tag along. I don't like going to Walmart. And the thing is, like, you can say, well, you're judgmental, you think you're better than those people. Well, there's some of that, because some of the people I see almost seem to be like, almost like subhuman or something. And it depends on where you go, But I know it's not just me, because someone I used to talk to told me that she had to disassociate if she wanted to go into Walmart and buy something. But part of what goes through my mind when I'm going into Savers or like Walmart or a place like that, and you're starting to, observe people and thinking like, everyone looks kind of weird and like poor, or like they look off, that something's wrong. But then I'm in there and I'm thinking, well, I'm one of those people because I'm here. So it just kind of like lowers my vibration a little bit. Like I wouldn't mind going into, it doesn't, like, for example, like if Walmart, in fact, speaking of my PS5, like I think that's where I bought it. Like I did the thing where you buy it online and then you can just go in. That's fine with me. As long as I don't have to, soak in the vibrations of the place, which it just, like I said, there's a density, But yeah, like for an example, if I wanted to, like I said, like I like buying books, not a whole lot of them, but I just like to, it's one of the, I really don't even collect anything, to be honest, but to the extent that I do collect anything, it would be books. But if I go into Savers and everything's out of order and it's a clusterfuck, I can't do that, because I'm not going to stand there for an hour, especially when there's a whole bunch of people around, which is the way it was today. So yeah, that was not a, not really productive. But that's okay, because I wanted to get it done, and I wanted to check out apparently all of what they don't have at all. If it were a Goodwill, maybe it would be different. But see, like, there's a reason that, people vilify Amazon, and they don't like Jeff Bezos, and I don't blame them. But I'm just saying there's a reason that people buy shit online, and it's because, like, so let's say like a few months ago when I needed to buy a new nut for my acoustic guitar, it's sort of impossible, close to impossible, to like go to a store and find that, It really is much easier to go online, and if you want something used, or you don't want to pay full price or whatever, unless it's clothing, and then you kind of have to try it on. But like pretty much other than that, like, yeah, no, I'm going to go online. I'm not going to drive 30 miles just to Savers, and then, I did. But, generally I try to avoid that, and then see that they basically have nothing that I'm interested in. Yeah, so anyway, I just wanted to make a video, and I think this channel might start to get a little bit more subscribers if I start to do topical things, but that's not really the way I do it. That's not really the way I make videos. But what I really want to do at some point is actually make a video, and I have a couple of different topics where I could do that. But yeah, for right now, like it's sort of fine with me that very few people are watching these, or I really don't even know if anyone is listening to them. I just know that, I have at this point 3 subscribers who are all people from, the old channel. Like, for instance, I'm just going to say this one last thing and then I'll end the video. But I recently bought a keyboard like 2 months ago, something like that. And I bought it off eBay, and it was about $100, and it wasn't really easy to find. Like, I had to find the correct thing because I wanted either 88 keys or something close to it where I could play Chopin if I wanted to. It's not like I'm such a great pianist that I can do all kinds of random shit, but like it really irks me when you get a keyboard and it's like it literally doesn't have enough keys to play whatever you're trying to play. It just sort of defeats the purpose, unless it's like a MIDI player thing, But I think it was $100. It was more to ship it, but and it's really not that great. It's an Alesis recital. That's literally what it's called. It doesn't sound realistic, but it serves the purpose of what I was trying to do, which is just literally so that I could play piano again. You know what I mean? Because like I said, I don't know people, and I'm not going to go to somebody's house and ask them to play their piano, and I can't. They have pianos for free on Facebook Marketplace, but I can't have a piano in an apartment. Not really, and I don't really want people hearing me. So I had to buy a keyboard. So if I had tried to somehow do this like at a secondhand place, first of all, I probably wouldn't have found a keyboard. If I had tried to go to some instrument store, nothing would have been used. And what I just bought, the equivalent to what I just bought would have been something like $1,000. Because they wouldn't have anything, partly because they wouldn't have anything used. And if I had tried to buy this Alesis recital piano, and for some reason, like someplace like, I don't know, some sort of guitar store or something, and they had, keyboards, it would have been like, I should have made a distinction there because I was talking about keyboards before, but it was computer keyboards, and now I'm talking about a piano keyboard, or however you want to say it. But so, if I had been to some sort of guitar store and they had that literal same thing that I bought, it would have been $300. So there's a reason people buy things online, and I don't think it's necessarily good, but it's just like, yeah, I can't fucking find what I'm looking for if I just go into some random store. And I'm not really one of those people that likes to look around for random crap, and then I find something and I'm really excited about it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm just saying, like, this was like the one time that I wanted to try to do that and see if I could find any sort of random old console that would have been just kind of cool to have. But yeah, obviously that wasn't meant to happen. But that's about all. Thanks for listening.